Hello everybody, welcome to my video showing you the PlayStation Plus August offering. Now if you do find this video entertaining, enjoyable or informative, please make sure you do click the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get straight into the video. Now we're going to start with a game I'd never heard of called Ender's Lilies. This is, as you can see on screen, a side-scrolling platform game. Now I'm not a big fan of these, I have to admit, and because of that, this is probably going to be a little bit negatively biased. But I will try and keep it as unbiased as I humanly can. Suffices to say that if this is your type of game, you will have probably a very different experience with this than I will. It's a traditional platformer, I can't say other than that. I do tend to do some funny things in games, and side-scrolling platformers tend to have more of an impact with that, simply because you're literally going backwards and forwards through exactly the same stuff all the time, and I mean the environment. So if it was a 3D open world game, for instance, some of the stupid stuff I would do you wouldn't really notice because there's a lot more to see. Whereas me trying to smack all of these swinging things from the ceiling, for instance, because there's not much else going on, you can plainly see that that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I was wondering whether I could actually break them to get some things out of them, if I'm being honest, but the answer is no, you can't. So what can I say about this game? The premise, from what I understood from my probably hour or so of playing this game, this gameplay is right from the start, by the way. I don't want to do too many spoilers in these introductory videos, I suppose, but the premise is that you are going around trying to free some corrupted spirits. That's the crux of the game, if I'm being honest. Art style, it's very much a I'm going to say soft Japanese animation type game. Definitely not manga animation, let's put it that way. But it is, I can never remember the name of the person, but there's some very nice Japanese animation. And he did go into making games, and I think Ni no Kuno was one of his games. And this has got a very similar art style. It's extremely etheric. Your character almost appears to be a spirit herself, but it does have a pleasing aesthetic to it, I think, is the main point. The backgrounds are relatively nice, but as I said, I'm a little bit biased against side-scrolling platformers because I do find them a little bit uninteresting in their world. I don't mind linear games by any stretch of the imagination, but side-scrolling platformers just don't really do it for me because they are a little bit too 2D. Now, considering that my gaming life started on side-scrolling platformers with games like Turrican 2 and Grisor, that's possibly why, because I feel like I've moved on from them. That's a bit of a strange thing to say in the world of gaming, where you move on from an entire genre, but I do find other types of games much more interesting and fun for me, personally. Now, as for the gameplay, it's actually extremely fluid. There are some points which I do find a little bit odd. So you can seem to jump to platforms which initially appear out of reach. You don't seem to jump high enough to reach them, but then all of a sudden you almost teleport to grab onto them. That's possibly not quite what's happening, but that's definitely the way it seems. If you looked at the jump that I literally made at the beginning of that 3-jump segment, you would notice what I mean. But yeah, other than that, the actual combat is quite nice, and it's not punishing by any stretch of the imagination, but there is enough of a challenge there. Now, you are able to heal. You have 3 prayers, which are your healing ability, which I've just used on screen then. And they do recharge whenever you sit on a bench. And yes, that is the way you save your game. You sit on a bench. It's traditional Japanese eclecticism, and I like that about it. It's one of the only things I do like about it, because it's very different to most other games in this genre. But all in all, the package that you have here is a very, very, very generic game in terms of gameplay. Aesthetics wise, it's relatively unique, and as far as you have, your attacks are actually from a spirit that follows you around. You can learn new spirits or save new spirits, which you can then learn their abilities from, but other than that, it is a very generic side-scrolling game. I don't think you're going to have any what's the word? You're not going to have any equipment, I don't believe. I may be wrong in that, but I don't think so. Anyway, let's move on to the next game in this month's collection. So the next game is Five Nights at Freddy's. Now this is a game that I'm going to say actively avoided, because whenever I've read a write-up about it, it just seems too freaky. I'm not into freaky jump scare kind of games in general. I don't mind jump scare games or jump scares in games that are interesting to me or get me hooked and involved. But this type just, I don't know, it just doesn't really do it for me. But it's one of the free games for the month of August, so I thought, as I'm doing this video, I can't really ignore one of the offerings. And I do like to try and cover off every single offer, because you guys watching this, you may find some entertainment in this type of game. So, again, I played an hour or two of this, and this is the very start of the game. Again, I don't want to do too many spoilers in these. It is a first-person, I'm going to say, a first-person hide-and-seek game, I think is the best way of putting it. So, your whole task is to get out of whatever Freddy's is. I'm going to assume that it's a fun house stroke horror house with a load of automaton robots, and you get trapped in the building, and you're now trying to get out of there before you are basically found. Now, I thought at the time that that was the premise, and it's just going to be sneak past certain people. Turns out it isn't. The rest of the robots, other than Freddy, seem to be quite murderous. So if you get caught, that is really game over. It looks like they eat you, but I mean, that just might be what they're trying to infer. It might just be that they catch you and then that's it. But what do we have? As you can see, we have an interface, some missions, a map, and some security cameras. So it's very much a case of sneak past everything, don't get caught. One thing that I did notice, and you will see in the gameplay that's on screen now, I was a bit dumb at this stage. The glowing button on the door seemed to be more of a draw than anything else in the room. So I'm looking for a button to open a door. Now that to me is a button to open a door. It did take me a ridiculous length of time to actually find out where I'm going. So here we go. There is a button on the wall that will open the door to the back room. I'll make it accessible to you now. So there's one door. There's no buttons around here. There's another door. Apologies for my phone going off. And there is the button. Why they stuffed it right by the games cabinet, I thought it was the power button for the games cabinet. But no, that's the way out. So there are some funny things like that. There's no indication on the map for you to show you where you need to go. Which, again, isn't a problem, but I think there should be some indication if it's a linear game. And this very much, by the way, is a linear game. You move from location to location. You can, in theory, sorry, it's not linear. I would say it's sandbox rather than open world. So you move from one location to another location to do a specific task. Now, it's a little bit freaky in its setting. Like I say, you seem to be in this fun stroke horror house with automatons. And you get these guys who are kind of locked in their rooms. But I think something has gone wrong with some of the others. I think that's the truth of the matter. But there's not really much else to say. I'm going to kind of skip a little bit further on in the gameplay for this overview, so we can see exactly what I mean as far as jump scares, and not necessarily jump scares in this situation, but murderous intent. And also so that we can see exactly the type of systems that you're going to be dealing with. So knocking things over to create distractions, etc. So there's nothing in that room to knock over, but there's obviously these paint cans which are... So you kind of hide, and then she turns around and you're like, oh good god. So there you go, and everything goes red, as you can see. Now that to me kind of seems like you have been killed by this giant robot. Not fun. So we kind of do that again. So we go in here, we knock these over, but then we sneak into here. Now again, it's like, well, she's right outside that door. What do we do? Suffice us to say, you basically sneak past her. That's fine. There's no way of hiding in the stall. We go into crouch mode and we sneak past her. It's very, very much a this is what you get type of situation. So you do unlock extra things later on. So you start out with a security camera system, which you will unlock, and that will help you see the enemy movements, and then you've got to try and match up your position to where the enemy movement has been spotted, and then sneak past them when they're not looking. If you're into stealth games, I can see that this would be, I'm going to say, a decent experience, but there are, in my opinion, much better systems to it. Now, that's not to say that the other systems are exactly the same, because in most games where there is stealth, there is also some form of combat, whereas in this, at least within the first couple of hours, there isn't. It's a case of if you get seen, you will get killed. But other than that, yeah, there's very much a run away, hide, and various other versions of that exact same situation. Energy running out is a bit of a horrible situation. And this did confuse me, because I was like, where do I go? And ended up getting myself killed. But there we go. That's basically Five Nights at Freddy's. So let's move on to the next game and the final game, which is Star Wars The Skywalker Chronicles, or the Skywalker Saga, I should say. Now, this is Lego Star Wars. Sorry, I should make sure that that is fully understood. Now, as with all Lego games, they start basically as the movies start. With Star Wars, it's a little bit different, that they start with the exact same lettering on the screen. You basically pick your saga. So for this, I started with the exact same system and sequence that the movies should have been. So I've started with episode 1. Obviously, the movies originally started episode 3, 4, 5 before they did 1, 2, and 3. But I've started in chronological order rather than release order. You get what you're expecting. If ever you've played one of the Lego games before, you know that they take a movie and they turn it into an extremely funny Lego-based game. Now, in this situation, they add in little bits of humour to an otherwise extremely well-known, what's the word? Not theme, but extremely well-known scene. So the very opening act and scene of The Phantom Menace was Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn arriving with the Trade Federation. Now, in the movie, they just fly up to the ship, dock, and then you're kind of inside, having what I would term as the worst negotiations ever. In this, you have some funny things, like them getting stopped by some droids on some platforms, knocking them over, just some hilarious things like the Trade Federation talking to who turns out to be Emperor Palpatine, and having Queen Amidala in the background with knives in the board. You kind of know what you're going to get. These are extremely fun games, especially if you have a family. You can usually play these multiplayer. They pretty much always start you with 2 characters to use at the same time, and then they add characters to your group as you go. This is no different. You start out with the 2 characters, and because of that, multiplayer, you can play as one of the characters each, which makes it nice and fun to play. The art style is exactly what you expect. It's Lego bricks. They have done an extremely good job, and have always done an extremely good job of making this into a exactly what you're expecting situation. The backgrounds, like the worlds and the stars and everything, are rendered extremely faithfully to what they would look like in the movie, and that just adds to the whole situation of it's pretty good that they've just stuck Lego in this universe. Now, there are some odd things, like you've just seen on screen, where you can fly directly into the ship's orbit, but because you've gone past the specific point they want you to be at, you have to turn around and fly away from the ship to dock. Those have always been in the game, and they're a little bit confusing, but at the same time, it's a game and issues do happen. I personally have played a few of the Lego games. I've never once completed one of them. They're fun for a while, but I must admit that I do find them much more entertaining with other people, especially as you can end up fighting each other, which is quite funny. But they're not something that really grabs my attention for a very long time, unfortunately. So, in reality, I would say August is an okay month for PlayStation Plus members. I'm not going to say it's the best month I've ever experienced, and I would not have paid for any of these games. 9 times out of 10, I use PlayStation Plus games to trial games before I buy. This wouldn't make me buy any of them, if I'm being honest. They are good games if you're into the genre. None of them are flawed games, but I don't think Sony ever select flawed games for their PlayStation Plus games of the month. What I do think is they do select games that generally, not always, but games that need a boost of downloads. Ones that possibly don't do as well as others. So the Star Wars saga, or the Skywalker saga, is probably getting on a bit now. The Star Wars games have been out for a very, very long time, and they just keep re-releasing them with another edition. So this does include all 9 of the episodes, all the way through to the ones including Rey. And I guess it's just a way of making use of all of their original games as well. But there we go. I'm going to leave the video there. Overall, an okay month. Not one to shout from the rooftops, but definitely not one to shirk at if you're into this sort of game. Well, as I said at the beginning, thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed and found this video informative, please make sure you do click the like button, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and if you would please share the video, and please leave me a comment. I don't really get many comments at all these days, and comments really are the way I interact with you as an audience. So even if you just say great or terrible or whatever. Now, just to let you know, if you do say terrible, I will be asking why you think it is so I can improve. But any comment that you want to put down will be really good. Well, I'm off. I'm going to go and go to work because I'm recording this very early in the morning. And I will see you in my next video very, very soon. You all take care. Bye for now.